I went to bed last night and woke up this morning listening to news of the situation in the Holy Land, uh, Israel and Palestine. And of course, depending on which news or media outlet you follow, you'll hear the story told one way, or you'll hear the story told another way, or perhaps even a third way, or fourth or fifth. I don't know. One thing that seems clear is this principle, which applies in every context: violence begets violence. And the pathway to peace in Jerusalem, specifically the city of peace, is complicated. The history, the social, psychological, interpersonal dynamics are also multi-layered and multifaceted. But how is it that people, as reporters, are noting? How is it that people are to work around issues of relating to neighbor when the barriers to trust continue to be built higher and higher? The Reverend Dr. J. Herbert Nelson, who's the stated clerk of the Presbyterian Church USA, offered a letter which I'll include a link to in today's reflection. He says, as people of faith, we must condemn violence in all its forms. Random acts of violence against one person or group over another, state-sponsored terrorism, the firing of rockets at civilian population centers, and the heavy-handed aerial bombardment of civilian neighborhoods in densely populated locales are criminal and are not in keeping with God's wish for God's people. He goes on to say, Hamas cannot continue to fire its homemade rockets at will toward Israel. In the end, violence will beget violence, and the civilian death toll will only increase. We, the Presbyterian Church USA, outright reject this indiscriminate use of force. Likewise, we condemn the ongoing racist, settler colonial mentality that continues to dominate the Israeli psyche and that plays itself out on a daily basis in subjecting the Palestinian population to that of second and third class citizens, both inside Israel as well as in the West Bank and Gaza, and that treats them as less than human. Such thinking only continues to perpetuate a regime that cannot and will not last. All these actions are crimes against humanity. So our hearts are with our siblings in what so many Muslims, Jewish folk, and Christians alike consider the Holy Land. And we are led, as the Reverend J. Herbert Nelson says, to three actions that we could take. Call on Congress and the current U.S. administration to take a more active role in seeking to calm the current situation, and a more proactive role in the future in helping to resolve, not just manage, the conflict that continues to divide Israelis and Palestinians. Second, we ask that the administration press Israel to halt the forced displacement of families in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood and across the occupied Palestinian territories. In addition, we ask the administration to investigate whether US-made weapons and equipment were used in Israel's demolition of Palestinian homes and property in violation of the Arms Export Control Act of 1976. And third, we ask members of Congress to support the defending of human rights of Palestinian children and families living under Israeli Military Occupation Act, which is H.R. 2590, introduced by Representative Betty McCollum, to prohibit the use of U.S. funds to support the military detention of children, the demolition of Palestinian homes, and further annexation of Palestinian territory. We ask Congress to hold Israel to the same human rights standards as other nations. So with an awareness of the divides, we pray for a way forward, for a movement away from that violence which spirals to more violence, that we might find a pathway to peace, that we might become knowledgeable about the issues, listen to stories of those impacted, and ask for God's love, grace, and peace to show up in real conversations between real people who make real decisions. Blessings on your day as we find God in these times of COVID on May the 14th.